I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested this morning at a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expected to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm Daniel, and I think we have a really good jaw-dropping interview that we're going to be playing for you here in a minute. Not too long ago, on Tuesday, actually, I met with Steve Goncalves, father of Kaylee Goncalves, one of the victims in the Bryan Kohberger case. Bryan Kohberger alleged to have taken the lives of Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, and Madison Mogen on November 13, 2022. And we had an interview, pretty extensive one, kind of went into a lot of details of the case, some things that I personally had not known before. And we're going to play that for you guys. But before we get into that interview, I want to remind you guys, or I want to show you guys, finally came in the Idaho House Bill 37 firing squad t-shirt. If you want to get your own, check out the link in the description. You won't be disappointed. We kind of talk about it a little bit. But without further ado,
and welcome everybody. Steve Goncalves, the father of Kaylee Goncalves. How are you doing, my man? How's it going?
Doing good. It's been a good day. I just got off being on call, so it's nice to get my schedule back. And it's a good day. And it's almost summer here in North Idaho. Weather's looking nice, so it's nice. It's nice, and I got good news today, so it's a good day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's it sounds good. It's out here in Texas. It's getting warm, and so I can imagine it's I guess a little bit cooler up there up in northern Idaho. You mentioned some good news today. I'm not sure how much you can go into, but more or less, what kind of news would that be?
We got some word that there was some paperwork that came out. I believe there were subpoenas, but don't quote me on that. I don't know exactly what they were, but there's paperwork that came out that asked people to be prepared to go to court. So I take that as a sign that Hippler's tight schedule is something he put together, and it looks like it's gonna happen. I'm kind of reading between the lines a little bit, but I can't say that that's a bad sign. So I'm glad that it's another thing that made this day a pretty good day.
Yes, sir. I've been excited's wrong. I've been liking what I've seen out of Judge Hippler. Not to say anything bad against Judge John Judge. it's just there's a different attitude, a different confidence, a different way of controlling the court. Have you noticed the difference? And I know you were a little bit against the move to Ada County. Do you feel the same way now?
You can have both things, right? You can be disappointed that the community that was hurt the most isn't the one that's able to see the justice. And I don't want to live in a country or a world where only our biggest societies are the ones that are able to orchestrate justice. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to be in a big city for you to be able to have the facilities and the resources to actually have justice. I think that's a bad message, and I'm still against that. But it is what it is. Moscow County, they didn't have the resources. They couldn't get it done. It was nothing against Hippler, but that courtroom was a fraction of the size of the one we're going to. I mean, it didn't even have an elevator. This one has an elevator of at least, I'm going to say 6 floors. I haven't been on all of them. I typically just go straight to Hippler's, which is on the 5th floor, and I get out there and go straight to his court. So, and the security, all the different things that they have, there's a lot that goes into a case that gets the attention of the nation. So, I was disappointed that we had to move it, but I believed in the leadership of the state of Idaho, that they would go out and find somebody who was built for this case. And that's exactly what happened. They went and found somebody who was understood the struggles that we were going through. And we got a leader that could go in there and clarify and understood the law, could figure it out on the fly. And you see that all the time. I mean, even presents logical arguments that I've been hoping somebody would, which just speeds the whole processes up. Otherwise, you send everyone home, then they build the arguments, and then they come back and they say something that could have been spoken right then and there. So I'm definitely happy with Hippler, and I think he's more than fair. And things are moving. I feel like we went 2 years without anything happening. So I'm glad to be in a situation where this isn't every day of my life. Hopefully we don't go past 3 years, and we get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, I agree 100%. One of the things that I've really thought that has made a big difference in this case is the transparency that's also been possessed through this case, and now through Judge Hippler. And how do you feel about the transparency, the information that is now going through? I mean, this is a lot of information. We've had 911 calls, we've had text messages, we've had a lot of things that have come out recently that were sealed. As a family member of a victim, how do you see that information coming out, and how does it make you feel?
I'm not a fan of gag orders. When we first got one on us, we did a little research on them. We found out like the origins of them that we found in the United States went back to the 1800s, and they were used to basically silence the legal representation of unions. So when they started hiring lawyers with their fees and started to be able to have a lawyer tell them, hey, these mines that we're going into aren't safe. The whole bird, canary in the gold mine, mm-hmm. that goes back to these guys. They would go down there, and when the bird died, they ran. That was their safety. So they hired lawyers, and then these lawyers started, TV wasn't a thing. They went to the local newspaper and started saying and describing the conditions. And one of the legals of the time said, you need to shut him up. You got to shut those lawyers up. So they made a gag order. So they're not really, I'm not a fan of them. I don't like them at all. I think the truth coming from the court, the facts as they are, you're still going to have jury members that decide what those ultimate facts are, but hiding information in the sake of thinking that you can control the narrative. I don't, maybe when you had 3 news channels back in the day, when I was a kid, you had like ABC, CBS, and NBC, and that was it. But those days are gone. I mean, you got these people that think he's innocent, and you got these people that think he's guilty, and there's every view in between. So you're not going to hear just one narrative. You're not going to hear 3 stations saying that he's guilty. And that was just one reason of a gag order, where they basically said that this individual couldn't get a fair trial. But like I said, the gag order goes back to suppressing a lot of truth. And I don't want to live in a country where we have to hide the truth as we know it, the facts that are found in an investigation. We have somebody who's been in jail for 3.5 years. You should have a lot of evidence, and society should agree that evidence is sound enough that we can keep these people off the streets. Otherwise, you release them on bail, So I think our case, a lot of people try to say he's innocent until proven guilty. That's true. That's true in the most generic way. But we do have a grand jury, and that grand jury did an indictment, and that indictment basically pulled him off the streets. So I remind people, I remind my children that we don't have like an innocent person in jail, that there is no evidence. We actually do have somebody in jail with a bunch of evidence. And if he doesn't have answers for that evidence, I believe the case is over.
Yeah, no, there's actually quite a bit of evidence against him that we know about. I'm sure there's even more we don't. I think a lot of people look at the probable cause affidavit and say, hey, well, this has a lot of the information. And at the time, it probably did, but not so much anymore. I mean, the PCA was developed in probably 9 days from the moment that they, got his name to the moment that they put him in handcuffs. And so a lot more time has gone since then. And, well, let's kind of get back into it. Let's go to the beginning. A lot of people struggle with that night. Why that night? And a lot of folks have struggled with, if this was a guy that was trying to commit the perfect crime, he would have noticed the new vehicle that was Kaylee's. Maybe he didn't know who it was. She had not been there for a while. A lot of people speculate that she'd moved out and there was nothing there anymore. Is that the case when it comes to what she was still living there or not?
She was spending way more time at our house. So depending on who this person was after, he may have chosen the date because that she was there, because the previous 2 weeks she'd been at our home and had been taking care of stuff. People that don't know the area, that community, I think, gets around 90,000 when it's full in term between WSU and UI. But when they're out, it drops down to like 20,000 people. So what that means is, if you're a local and you're one of these kids being a barista or working on tips, the money's gone. It dries up. So they all get out of town once school's out. So, she was up here, hustling, doing, she can go back to her barista job. I know other kids, my son, Jack, they come up here and as long as you don't burn your employer, you give them a call and you can pick up a shift at any drop of a hat. And we don't have the seasonal flows out like they do, so they could come up here and make good money. So I don't think she was there that much. And he had stalked that place out 23 times at least that we know of. We know he'd done more than that. There's some surveillance that shows that some of the days that he was there, he didn't have his phone on. The people got hung up, and even myself, over the stalking. The stalking in Idaho is defined as a certain profile. He was definitely stalking, surveilling, whatever definition you want. That he didn't have reasons to be in that location within 100 yards. And I can guarantee you they've checked his bank records and seen if he was actually shopping like he, like some people are just naive and stupid. They want to be stupid. They want to believe myths and fairy tales and be lied to. I don't have any time for those type of people. So, we nailed down all these type of things. When we talk with the prosecution, we're just like, let's make sure that we've checked bank records. Let's make sure that we can define everything that this individual is doing when he was making these trips. And, when you're talking about 23 trips, can a person make a perfect backstory every single time they're driving out there? Sure, some days you can go to Winco and pick up a 6-pack and some potato chips or milk or whatever. But it takes true discipline to do it every single time. And I know mistakes were made. And people think, he was smart and he, it doesn't matter. The days of making a perfect crime, they're over. You can't do it. There's just too many sensories. I mean, every camera is a sensor. Every car on the road, every single year we get, there's more and more cars with cameras. You see all these morons that are, keying Teslas. What kind of idiot doesn't realize Teslas have cameras on 24/7? That they don't even need the car to be turned on. Yeah. So when you see stuff like that, your days of making a crime and not being seen, they're over. And thank God for that, because maybe people can just get over it and treat each other good and stop trying to cut out corners and trying to, it's very rare that you get some individual who thinks he's got visions of grandeur so much that they think that they can decide when people live and die. I mean, that's a psychopath. That's somebody who's, or it's just got a death wish, and he wants to go out and be famous off of what his actions are rather than who he is. So I think you had that place, stacked out, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's seen something that night that made him decide that he had to do it. He had to build up, and I think there was multiple times he went there and he thought it was going to be the night. And he got frustrated because there was a party or there were some people there and he wasn't allowed to do it. So he made a rash decision. He rushed himself and he went and did it. And, like I said, he's not as smart as he thinks he is. None of us are as smart as we think we are. If we think we can get away with it, and a whole community is not going to be able to figure out that we're involved.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned the 23 times that he was around that place. In the documents, it verifies or clarifies that on these occasions, these 23 times, that he was within 100 meters, and it was between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Not when majority of your shopping is done, and there's not a store within 100 meters of the victim's residence. You also mentioned that maybe perhaps he was out there with his phone off. The documents only bring up to November 17th. I don't know if you know or not, but I think that if Kaylee was maybe perhaps the subject of the target there, maybe there'd be some sort of correspondence there with the times that he was in the area with his phone off, or the nights that he went with his phone off was also the times that Kaylee may have been in town. If those days correspond together, then that might be something that really points in that direction. Back early on, you'd mentioned that injuries didn't match. A lot of people have speculated what you meant by that, including myself. I still don't know the answer. Would you mind explaining what you meant by that?
I'm careful with it because throughout this whole investigation, there was things that we found on our own, and there was things that they shared with us, and that was one of the things that we kind of found out on our own. So I did share a little bit, and usually when I do share things, it's things that I didn't give my word that I wouldn't share it. It's hard to describe. I don't want to go too far down, but I like how I said there. We talked to Mabbit, and she basically said that they were in the bed together. They had passed away, but she's seen markings and damages that made her suspect that that there was more to what had happened to them in that bedroom. So, I mean, I'll say he struck my daughter. I'll give that out. He punched her, and so for all those people who think he's a great guy, now he punched my daughter right in the face. So yeah, he's got some shit coming to him. We're coming for him. That's one thing that was a little bit different. There's more to it, but I'm gonna have to sit down with make sure that I don't say something that is gonna play into the case and tie anybody's hands.
Understood. Yeah, we definitely don't want to, I don't mean any disrespect either by the question, and I hope it's not too much. I've never wanted to ask yourself or anybody anything about the injuries or the severity. My thoughts had always been that obviously there would have to be a first person that he'd attack, and we'd probably have more of a surprise, and then a second person that he might have to act a little bit more quickly. But it sounds like it could be even more than that. Which is it's the whole thing is sad, and I apologize, and I'm sorry for your loss. And so, you mentioned that law enforcement, they were open with you in the beginning, and then at a certain point they stopped. Was there ever a time when they may have told you that they believed that the person who committed this crime was outside of her circle, a stranger, so to speak?
Yeah, very early on, they talked about they being the FBI. So we have an FBI satellite in the location right here in Coeur d'Alene. So we went down there, and they laid out a profile for us. Said we wouldn't be surprised if this individual picked this community on purpose, because I guess they knew by the crime scene that this was a planned out event. There wasn't. They would know how something would look like if it's, like a domestic violence type thing. It's going to look different than a crime where somebody sneaks in, gets to the people, kills them, and then gets out and doesn't leave a bunch of evidence, a bunch of blood trails out, and all that type of stuff. So early on, they said that they think that this individual picked this community, they wouldn't be surprised if he was on hugging the border of Washington. He was on the Washington side. There was I think a Lewis and Clark murder case that was 5 victims, and they never figured out who it was. So if this person was studying law, they may have known that this community had already had a serial killer come into their area, and then they got away with it. So that, and if this person wanted to go to a college and go get, education, then, he had 2 colleges to pick from. And he was also going to an area that didn't have a history of always catching their serial killers. So I think they had identified that 100%. And they went down some scenarios of like what this person would probably behave like, what they would do, what their profile was. And the thing is, between the FBI, the state police, and my own investigation and investigator, and just having a presence online with all these kids that could reach out to us and talk to us, we found out a lot of information pretty early on. And I think maybe law enforcement was scared to have somebody who was that in tune with what was going on. We knew about the chief before it ever came forward. We knew about the white car day one. They were like, they're looking for a white car. We didn't come out and tell anyone that because we didn't want people flooding us with fake clues. That was one reason why we never even gave out some of the details on Kaylee, because we'd have people that say, oh, I know who did it, and this is how it went down. So then we'd say, well, what happened to Kaylee? And they could never, obviously they couldn't tell us what those details were. So we were doing the same thing that officers do. You keep some exclusive information back so you can vet people that are trying to, be a snitch or an informant, or, they're trying to leverage like, hey, I'm going to tell you this stuff about what this other guy did so I can get out of jail, or I can, things like that. So we went through some of that. And, but I think when we were accurate and we had that information, there was definitely, I know individuals looked us up and said, how are you guys coming to this info? How are you guys getting this stuff? And, maybe it was just luck. Maybe it was determination. And I feel like there was times I worked on this case 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, we figured some stuff out, and, that can definitely intimidate people, especially for a person I told them right off the beginning, you're not going to gag me. You're not going to silence me. I'm not going to play a part in helping the person who killed my daughter. I'm going to do everything in my path to make sure that I play a role that this guy is killed and held 100% accountable to the fullest extent of the law, directly because he chose my family.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, 100%. As a father myself, if I was really hope that. And I was in your situation, I'd probably be in the same boat, my man. Doing everything I possibly can, having as much attention as I possibly can get before it turns into like some sort of cold case. Because I can fairly positively say that may have been a fear at one point that they weren't going to catch this guy.
Yeah, I mean, we all hear about the truck driver or the rambling guy who just comes through your town. You know how hard it is when somebody who's doesn't have any connections to your community, and this individual didn't have any he didn't have a history. He was just moved out there. Mm-hmm. So those are the hardest cases. I've become very obsessed with working with legislators over this, because I'm like, something long-standing that we can do to help these children, this happened to them, is we can pass some laws that can help make it harder for somebody to come into our community and do something like this again. And one that's always been in the back of my mind, I've never worked on it, was just registering like truckers. If you're going to be an interstate trucker, you probably should have your fingerprints or something done into a system where just because there's just so much, it's impossible to ask a local police officer to investigate some guy who comes into your community for a couple hours and you're never going to see him again.
Yeah, 100%. The defense has brought up that they have a full of alternate suspects, and I know they have some blood on a handrail, and I know they have some other persons that they might look at. Maybe perhaps an incident that may or may not have occurred at Signakai. I don't know if it did or didn't. Have you heard anything about that situation, or is that just all rumor?
It's all rumored BS. I mean, he was with his sister, man. These kids are so good. I mean, he was being his little date for his sister. I mean, wow. I mean, you see so many brothers and sisters fight and they can't stand each other, and these guys were she was inviting him over for like a dance to be around her brother. So it just goes to show how close these kids were. But yeah, I haven't heard no real any truth to any of that.
Another person that I think that the defense might look at it is Jack, and a lot of reason might be just because he was with the girls that night at the corner club. He was the person that was getting phone calls. A lot of people still suspect that those phone calls may have been somebody else, without going into any details, because that's their business. But did you hear any voicemails, or was it just text messages? Was there like proof of life at the time when those voicemails or calls were left?
The phone stuff was investigated by Christy and Olivia, so I wasn't around when they actually got into those things. I seen some of the screen captures, but I'm trying to help people understand how we know for a fact that Jack's not involved. There is the whole cast went into that neighborhood, and people are going to understand that cast detail is, though we didn't get some of the timing records, there's still a lot of information there that they did get. And Jack is one of the people where they did get the timing records, which lets you go within feet. Mm-hmm. So they knew when Jack's phone was moving when he was in his bed, sleeping and moving around, whether that was under his pillow or it was on his blankets or whatever, moving around. So they have a absolute certainty where Jack was that night, and there's surveillance that was going on around there that lets them know. I mean, of course, he could sneak up in the attic and go through the crawl space. You could always, you could do these YouTube crazy scenarios where he got out of the house without triggering any of the surveillance that they had. But realistically, they know exactly where he was. Now, is he going to be an alternative suspect? Hopefully they don't put him through that. But if he does, he'll be coming into that courtroom with us right by his side. And he'll probably be staying over at our house at our Airbnb. So,
how's he doing?
Yeah, it's a waste of time, but she can only have certain kinds of suspects. These suspects have to play a part. They have to have some kind of evidence of being in that house. And a house with 6 different girls, there's going to be a lot of suspects. That qualifies a lot of people that could justifiably be in that home. So that's what she's going to do. But I go back to my Idaho community and some of the things that I've already heard grand jury members talk about and hear and speak, whether it was Blum or some of the other people that recorded some of the things. They said, these guys aren't stupid. These women aren't stupid. They know a suspect when they see one. I remember one of the greatest questions that one of them asked was, I think they said they asked the judge to verify if he ever had a fishing or a hunting license since he bought the K-bar, since it was delivered to his house. And he did. But that just goes to show that how intelligent these guys are. They're thinking it through, like, what reason would a guy have if he's not in the military? These guys out here are outdoorsmen. They know why you would have one of those. The K-bar is a military weapon to keep you, to fight other men. Really, that's what it's for. So you could be a moron and use it for filleting fish, but they wanted to rule that out. And maybe you're using it for hunting. You don't really know too much about hunting and the type of knives that most hunters use. But these guys are on top of it. And I think if he thinks he picked the right community, a bunch of dumb hillbillies, he's really in for a rude awakening.
Oh yeah, 100%. How is Jack doing? Is Murphy? Is he with Murphy? Is Murphy with Jack?
Yeah, they go camping. They do a lot of outdoor stuff. From what he said to us, we're hoping to do some fishing trips out here. We go into Montana. There's some lakes out that are pretty remote with some huge big old rainbow trout. So,
Nice.
yeah, we'll plan something. We'll do something with him this summer, and every year he's out there doing something in the mountains out on these. We call them logging roads. They're just dirt roads that take you out in the middle of nowhere, and you can get away from it. I know he's going to be very stressed out. He's a very quiet kid. I mean, if you could look at somebody who would be like the least temperament to ever pull a crime like this off, it would be Jack. I mean, Jack is. Yeah. I mean, Kaylee, they've been dating for 8 years, I think, and she said he had never even raised his voice to her. He had never, ever insulted her in any fashion. They'd broken up for a while, and she went out with another guy, and he was so rude to her. And she was like, basically being around this guy in an hour, he had insulted me more than Jack had in 8 years. Mm-hmm. So she was like, I might not ever find another Jack again. I mean, that was her exact words to her mom. So I have no worries that they'll do that. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it'll go anywhere.
Yeah, well, let him know that he'll be in my thoughts and prayers as long as with you and your family as well. Now, Bryan Kohberger gets arrested. How did you find out about his arrest? When did you find out about his arrest?
They called Shannon Gray, our lawyer, right away, as soon as before us, and they probably gave him like a rundown of the situation and how much they could say, and some paperwork that came along with it in an email. And so then he called us and he shared with us and said, hey, they've arrested a guy. Here's his name. Here's his background. There's a message that I sent you guys with some PDFs, some, I think it was the affidavit and a couple other little side notes on there. I mean, it might've been some of the stuff from Pennsylvania. I don't remember exactly, but that's how we heard. It went straight to Shannon, then Shannon to us, and then we heard from Karen, and we started kind of just. We were super excited just because the next day we had a celebration of life, and we basically had prayed that this person would be caught and we wouldn't have to go through that celebration of life thinking that this creep would be trying to be there among us and try to blend in and get some kind of satisfaction by watching us all suffering.
Yeah. I didn't know it was that much earlier before the celebration of life. I'm assuming the first thing that you're doing is researching this guy, and there's something called the Andrew Garrett discovery. Are you familiar with it?
I sure am. Yeah.
And it sure does seem like you guys were on the same page as far as the possibility of a social media account potentially belonging to Bryan Kohberger, following some of the victims and your daughter and Maddie and Xana. Do you still feel that way, that that's the right profile and that there was some sort of following, at least on the internet, of some sort?
Yeah. It was kind of confusing at the very beginning, and I'm sure it was confusing for the investigators, because I went in there one day with my family, and we were like, what happened to the LinkedIn? Why were you guys into our account? Why did you remove it? And they looked at us like we were from another planet. Eyes bulge, and we could tell they were being completely honest. They were like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Well, we later on figured out and investigated and found out that it was the FBI. So there was two parallel investigations going on at the same time. So I think, and I've been told that the FBI wanted clear lines. Like, you guys are going to be working on this stream of information. We're going to be working on this stream of information. And Stalking was one of them. When I had to sit down meetings with those FBI agents, they talked about how it was a 20-year term that they could possibly get if, because I was worried that things, I thought at one particular time, maybe I could have the charges dropped on Kaylee and picked up at the federal level. And then there would be a fail-safe in case something happened at the state level, if any mistakes were made, if anything got thrown out. We were just trying to be that careful. And they basically let me know that they had an investigation that they could still pick up, even if something got messed up. This person was not going to walk free if somebody came out and, heaven forbid, got caught lying, or the Brady, or whatever the different things that can throw evidence out. There was still another investigation that they felt very confident in. That I remember one of the agents saying, we're the FBI. Do you think that a mass murderer of 4 would be released on a technicality? And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, no. We've sealed, we've looked, we have evidence. This individual will never be free again. 100%, we have the right guy. There's no doubt in our minds. And we can have him at the state level. We can have him at the federal level. So it built my confidence into sticking with the state level and not. It would have been more expensive. And I literally was at the point where I was like, if it means that we don't ever... Kaylee doesn't ever go to court for her, thing, I would have been fine with that, just to have the backup, just to have the know that if something went wrong. But they were like, no need. This is, I've had individuals that do nothing but capital cases, 100%. That's all they do every single day of their lives, say that this is the strongest case that they've ever worked upon. They've never seen a case with this much evidence.
It sure does seem like it. I mean, at this point, it sounds like they have pieced together his entire kill kit, from the mask to the knife to the sheath, the sharpener, the jumpsuit. I wouldn't be surprised if they found Van's shoes somewhere and other types of shoes and booties.
That's 13, right?
Yes, size 13. The judge mentioned something about a gift card as well. I thought that was interesting. As far as the purchase goes, to me, if he did use a gift card, that just shows that he was trying to hide the purchase, and not very well, because he still got it delivered to his house by name. When you mentioned the FBI, I thought this case could have easily gone to the FBI, given the fact that a lot of that kill kit was purchased in Pennsylvania. He traveled to Washington. If he was doing some following online, one could perceive that some of that following may have been done in Washington. He crossed state lines to go and park at their residence, and for at least on one night for over an hour, between 10 to 4 a.m. Those are all pretty big signs that this could have gone federal. But they went through the state, and from based on what you're telling me, it sounds like they got a strong case against them.
Yeah. One of the reasons that you can make it a federal case is if you conspired. If you're sitting there and you're doing things online, I think I'd have to go back and review the actual provision, but it talks about if you're committing a crime and you're using a computer to do the crime, And that K-bar being ordered there means that he's got premeditation, and he started planning it back there and then went and committed it in another state, and then or relocated to another state from the origins of the crime, and then jumped over to Idaho. So I definitely think it could have qualified for a federal case, and I think they would have. I think there was really a close battle, and there was some back and forth on who was going to take this case over. But there was so much evidence that they were like, let's just let them. It is an Idaho thing. Let them have it. And I know one thing that they told me was don't expect the death penalty if it goes federal.
Oh, got you. Yeah, that makes a big difference there.
Yeah, and I 100% wanted the death penalty. So that was one of the biggest reasons why we kept it where it was.
There you go. That makes the biggest difference there for me as well. You know, kind of going back to that night, there's video of a vehicle that's traveling around. There's also a video from another place on Linda Lane that captures also some traveling around. Early on, there was a lot of speculation. Some people still point at this, that they can hear things throughout earlier portions of the night. I'm not sure if you have or not, but if you heard any of the audio that may be closer to the victims' homes, do you hear any of those such things? Do you think there may be some sort of play with the audio on some of those footages?
I know the backstory of where that Linda Lane came from, and it was a money grab. It was literally, I know the exact person that went and purchased this thing. And so they tried to get me to release it or discuss it or bring it up in one of the interviews that I was doing, you know, and it get me to echo some of the things that were on it. So I had some people look at it themselves, and they were like, it's either been the audio has been manipulated, or it's so poor quality that they didn't have any confidence in it. And some of the things that are the times don't match up to the times that I know my daughter was moving and doing and sending taxes and all these different things. So, and plus we had the 1112, I think that is the other surveillance that basically we could hear a lot clearer during the exact same times. So anyone who thinks that they're breaking a case over these cameras and whatever they're hearing, it's kind of naive. It's naive to think that you heard something and everybody's going to throw this investigation off and not and you know overlook something that you found is so amazing. You know, this true crime stuff is it's an eye opener. You know, it sucks to have your daughter's murder be like some form of somebody's like entertainment, you know, and they like to go out there and stir up their followers and make you know, narratives that are more like for novels than real life, you know. So it's terrible. And I don't know what I'm going to do if I ever cross one of these people.
Yeah.
I've thought to myself, do I just go to jail? And you know, do I just
not worth it?
But it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, you know.
Yeah.
And that's not most of them. There's only a few that are like that. I mean, most people are trying to be honest and like you are and you have been. And it does, and I don't even expect you to always be right, you know. We haven't been right every time either. So I just expect people to be honorable and don't purposely spin a narrative that you know in the back of your mind is false. And you just hope that your users never, you know, cross the same information that you found. You know, you go suppress certain things to keep your narrative alive longer. I'm almost positive that there's people doing that because I've seen other people make comments that said, "Hey, this happened at this time. This doesn't follow your scenario," and then they just strike that. You know, that thing's been deleted. You know, they delete it after a certain amount of time. So it tells me that this person isn't after the truth. They're just after, you know, rallying up their followers.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I've seen that. I've seen that in a few different cases where, in different ones too, where this mob just kind of gets out of control, which is one of the things that I really try to go up against here on this channel is to put out there what's correct and accurate versus and to combat those that are trying to manipulate what is put out there. There's been literally a situation where there was a scenario with the DNA in this case where they were talking about how it doubled up. And the way it was explained to me was as if you had like an audio where you wanted to play an MP4 and an MP3, you had to change it. And so now you have the MP3 and the MP4, but they're both the same thing. And yet on these Kohberger channels, they just hear that it doubled it, that they hit the pause button. They don't go into the explanation of why it is. And they leave a huge piece of context out. And that's what we tried to add on here is that context to make sure that everybody understands exactly what's going on. You brought up something interesting. You brought up the 1112 King Road video. Without going into too many details, because I don't want to violate any gag order, but when you have the opportunity to maybe view it or not, is there a distinct time difference between the DoorDasher? Do you see a DoorDash vehicle? And is that vehicle different than the white vehicle that is suspected to be Bryan Kohberger's?
What I seen, yes, it's a different vehicle. The times line up with what the courts have specified. I often wonder if that vehicle crosses paths with the white Elantra. It looks to line up to where they possibly do, and that'd just make the case even that much stronger. Especially now, I don't the age of that car. I don't know if it would have a camera. And I don't know what I've never done Uber Eats or any of those type of things, so I don't know what their rules are if you have to have some way of tracking your vehicle. But yeah, there things. There's certain cameras that are a lot better at detailing what's going on, and they've triangulated all of the cameras together. So they're not relying on just one, and the timing that they do between when it hits one and then goes to another, then they can tell you the speed that it was doing. So that white car was all over that crime scene, and the person had their phone off, which we knew very early on with those FBI saying that we're almost looking more for someone who turned their phone off during these times. That was more of a red flag to them than having a phone on. Now, most of the phones, of course, they're going to go through all those people in that area and look for out of area numbers. So if those girls, their numbers weren't as interesting as if somebody that was from, let's say, Montana went through there, that had not shown up ever on all the previous dumps that they weren't just dumping that day. They were putting together all those things. So they were looking for outsiders, and they were also looking for somebody who had turned their phone off. Because what do college students never do? They never turn their phones off. Right. They never turn them off. I mean, they put them on a charger next to their bed. Why would your phone go off? And I used to have the exact term on this, but some of the Garretts, some of the people that I've spoken with, Shadow Dragon, there's a hard close. Don't quote me if that's the exact word it is. I'd have to go look at my records, but there's a way that they can identify when a phone's been turned off and how it's been turned off. And they can even tell you if the battery life, what it is. So when this moron turned off his phone, hard turned it off with 90 some plus battery life, and he's sitting in his car driving around, people, you're fools if you think that this is just all coincidence. Here's another coincidence that they're going to be checking on. So how many stargazing apps do you got on that phone? How many you got on there, Bo? Because I don't think you got any. And believe it or not, those are actually pretty popular apps. I was shocked. So the amount of detail that these investigators have done, it's impressive. I mean, these are great, hardworking men. They shouldn't be attacked. They shouldn't be pulled into these conspiracies and all this stuff. I mean, a little bit goes with the job, but this case, I feel like it's taken it to another level. And I just don't think it's fair. I think it's foolish to think that you got Moscow in on some kind of conspiracy, and then you got Washington State, and then you got Idaho State, and then you got the federal. They're all working together. I mean, at what point is it just get so ridiculous? But maybe this is what Hollywood's done, is just poison people's minds to where they every movie you watch has a flip and something happens at the very end, and that's what people are expecting in this case, because it's just so obvious. There's so much evidence pointing to one guy. They think that there has to be this curvature, some special ending, but this is real life people, and they got the right person. And there was a time where I was trying to be very open about who it was, but they laid it out in a way that still hasn't came out. There's stuff that is going to literally blow people's mind. Like, this jury is going to be like the first one, an hour and a half, and go get him, indict him. He's done.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, people who think that these guys are going to be like sitting for hours stressing out on what argument Anne had. Anne is so desperate right now. It's a joke. She's so desperate that she's using the work that me and my family put together to get all those clues. We did those interviews so all these people would call, and if you see something, say something, and that led to a massive amount of tips. And now she's going through all those, she's going through all that stuff, trying to find out somebody that can fit the profile of somebody she can say is an alternative suspect. But, thank God Idaho has rules. So, otherwise we'd probably be 4 weeks of her just rambling off just nonsense and just trying to overwhelm the jury with just waste time. And I still suspect that, but we won't be playing a part of that. And, we're a different kind of family, she can say something in court and then I'll get out of that courtroom and I'll rebut it. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not here to help her have an easier case. Once that jury's secured in that room, there's nothing I can say on the camera that could ever reach to them. At that point, I'm letting it all out. Everything's coming out, and it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting because there's no holds bars at that point. We can once that jury's been selected, picked, and put into a chamber where they're not going to be watching the media, then they're so concerned. They're just making up stories like we wore. I never wore anything. None of the G's ever wore any of that. That's why we went back and said, go find it. Find some proof. And of course they backed off of that because they went and checked the cameras. There was no. Yeah. But when I leave that courtroom, I'll put on anything I want. And my family will put on anything they want. And they're not going to control that. So, like I said, we're going to be a family that makes this individual look back and think, if there was one big mistake I made was going after a G, because those guys didn't stop. They just kept coming. They kept coming. And how much easier would have my life been if I didn't have to turn on the TV and only see that guy, pointing out what I did.
100%. 100%. As an IT guy, apparently he puts his phone in a VPN when he turns it on at 4:48. Mm-hmm. What does that tell you? What is a VPN for those that don't know? And what is somebody trying to accomplish with that?
VPN protects some of your identifiers. And normally on a PC, it's just mainly your IP. They're not nearly what people think they are. So what you could do is, so you're really tough. It's really hard to do this with a cell phone, because a cell phone, here's the problem with the cell phone is the towers won't communicate with you until you prove that you have a contract to use their services. So what that means is when your phone comes up, goes through boot order, and it goes out and says, hey, this is my unique identifiers. I'm this person. I'm on AT&T. I'm on Sprint, whatever it is. I got a vile contract, and this it's a certificate on that device says I want to use your tower. and it works. And then you put on a VPN, but that's already told the tower that you're there. Whereas a computer, you can have a VPN start before your internet starts. And then you can go out your internet and totally remain hidden. And so you look like you look like your ISP's number at that point. And you don't look like the house address. You're being able to hide your house address and look like the internet provider's address. But you can't do that on a cell phone. So this guy wasn't that smart. I mean, especially when it comes to IT. If he thought he could come out here and teach us, which we're all like ex-Californians, and people worked at like San Francisco and San Diego. I work with some brilliant individuals, MIT, all over. He was a moron. What he could have did, which we were trying to rule out, is if he had another phone and he tethered this one. So if he would have shared his Wi-Fi here and put VPN on there and then took this phone and then tethered it to that phone, he would have made it very, very difficult for them to track down. And then on this phone that doesn't have a cellular provider, doesn't have any contracts, took pictures, did all this stuff on that, we had to rule that out.
Yeah.
And that was a scary moment to think that, we could have had somebody that was truly a cloud forensic
expert,
smart individual. This guy was just a stupid kid that, thought he could have his moment out here with what I think you were talking about, like these rural police officers.
Rural, yeah.
Yeah, like these guys don't know what's coming. I'm this new East Coast kid that understands all this stuff, and I'm gonna show them how to use all this stuff. Yeah. The computer stuff is gonna do him in just as much as that DNA is.
Yeah, I agree. Early on, you had mentioned once that his phone may have touched the Wi-Fi. Is that accurate, or was that something that maybe? What did you mean by that? Because I haven't seen that in any document, and I'm curious about that.
Well, I was reading a certain document where it was talking about, I believe it was IEME ID, and those are associated with MAC tables. And I do know some stuff that's not public, and they were trying to get a hold of some of the records on the router. I may have just misread what I said, because it would have came out by now. The same people who make these lies up, and I'm like, well, where's your warrants? If some other person's involved, where are these warrants at? There's some guy out there that they hear on that Linda Lane. Probably shouldn't say his name just because he's probably sitting in jail wondering why people are even talking about him. I think Farley or some shit. Yeah. So that guy, come on, give me a break, guys. Give me a break.
Yeah.
It doesn't match up. It's a waste of time.
It sure is. It sure is. Overall, I think I strongly suspect they got the right guy. I mean, at this point, their only argument is that the DNA is or the sheath was planted. I don't even think they're arguing the DNA isn't his. In one of these recent documents, they reference how much DNA was found, and when I Google searched it, it's a large amount of DNA that was found on that knife on the knife sheet. I think it's going to do him in. I don't think he has very many arguments left. I know right now he's throwing out autism and a bunch of other things. Some folks are thinking maybe he's trying to come up with something to push a plea deal. Have you heard of any type of plea deal? And do you think they would ask you first if they were going to go down that road?
By law, they have to. Idaho law, not federal law. We're building. Old Thompson, he was like a Santa Claus. I think Thompson's skin's gotten tougher, and I think he's gotten a little bit more fighter spirit. And I think seeing us battle with going through all the things that we've gone out with, there's stuff that people don't know. People like vandalizing, people showing up at our house, people posting pictures of our address, all this stuff. And I think he thought, if they're going to go through this, then I'm gonna do the will of the victims. And but I don't know if his heart was always in it. 100%. It's hard. Nobody really wants to murder, and go through a murder case and have to end somebody else's life. None of us want to do this. And we were forced to do this. We were forced into this behavior. We didn't want nothing to do with this loser. I mean, this guy was literally 27 years old, living with his parents. He's a complete loser. It's absolutely frustrating that my daughter got murdered by a complete loser. She's graduating a year early on the dean's list. Nobody else was graduating a year early in that around her. She was a rock star, and this loser ends up sneaking in and killing her. So the least he can do is pay the ultimate price. And I think I've said this before in the past. Maybe the reason we have these school shooters and maybe we have these mass killings is because we never force people, especially youth, that see somebody like Bryan and there's all these fan clubs and stuff and think, well, I'm that loser too. And the idea of me being on TV and the world talking about me, and I'm getting these suits and I'm getting vegan meals and I'm up on there and girls are sending me letters and people are putting money on my books. All of a sudden I'm somebody. And there's these confused kids that think being a killer somebody's better than being a nobody that I am doing nothing. And that's sad and that's terrible. And they need more parent, interactions and fathers. And I would ask them to go, join sports or find a family, and if a family can be a football team, a baseball team, a basketball team, it could be a church, it could be a lot of other things, but don't think that it's all, girls and all that stuff. Matter of fact, one of the laws we're working on is once this individual has been charged, you put money on his books and we'll be taking that money. It won't be going home. Yeah, it will be going to pay for his prosecution and to help victims and mothers and people with counseling and other things. So go ahead and send money now, but once he's convicted, he'll never see $1 again.
Yeah, I don't. That's the way it should be. He obviously he's not convicted yet, but once he is convicted of this crime, there's a saying, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime, and it's for a reason, and it's more than just sitting behind bars. I mean, it's the punishment that's behind it as well.
Yeah. Another thing about the death row is what people don't, maybe they do know. I never knew. It's 23-1. So you're locked down 23 hours and you get 1 hour out. So you can't go and enroll in colleges. You can't pursue higher education. You can't go and have dreams of, motivating other people to do what you did. This individual is sick. He studied crime. He studied the BTK killer. His professor was literally orchestrated a private session with him where she got private interviews so she could make a book, an exclusive book, and then she split the profits with him. So then he could use that money to flex in prison and buy cigarettes and buy power and buy influence in there. And we're not going to let that happen. That ain't going to happen in Idaho, and that's not going to happen to him. But that means we got to work with legislators and we got to find like-minded people that truly care about their community and put out the message that, this person picked the wrong state to do this in. And we've done everything to make sure that we don't attract this type of behavior ever again.
Yes, sir. Well, if you need any help from me putting out any word or petitions or any of those type of things, you got it.
I like your shirt. Your shirt's right on the same page,
Yeah.
Firing Squad. You see that Firing Squad? We'll probably have a shirt for that, on these press days that we're in court when we get out of the courtroom. But yeah, that chair they put you in, shit gets real when you get in that chair, I'm sure. When they strap you into that bad boy.
100%. And yeah, I think I don't think it's going to be that long of a trial. I know that they're anticipating, I think they said 3 months, but at the end of it, I know there's a lot of evidence. I don't think the defense is going to have much to fight back, to be honest with you. I mean, at this point, their biggest argument is a partial alibi over an hour before the murders happened. And in an area where it's not exculpatory for him to continue to just turn down that road that heads to Sunshine, and it gets him right there in front of Floyd's Canada shop before 302 again. That's what they're working with. And if that's what they have, it shouldn't be very long.
Oh, the statistics of this case are just incredible. So people who say that this is just what is circumstantial evidence. They're not talking to professionals, because I'm talking to professionals, and they say that there's direct evidence all over this case. This case is, like I said, this individual does nothing but capital cases, and this is the most that he's ever seen. And I live by that. We will show that. So DM, that's direct evidence. DM's testimony, and people think, oh well, whoopie-doo-dah, they're bushy eyebrows, and it's a white guy who's skinny. Well, do you realize, people, that they've run the stats on this? A guy at that age, the category, I think they went to like 30 to I think like 19 or 18, and said, what percentage is male? And so you remove, and in college town, there's more girls going to college than there is males. So then that dropped it in, like, let's say 46. And then they said, okay, white. And then that dropped it lower. And then they said lean. That was the one that got my attention. 70% of people in that age category are overweight.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got an individual who, as eyewitnesses there, that literally like 2 out of 10 meet that qualification, a white guy that's lean.
Yeah.
And he has a white car, and he's out there, and for some reason he doesn't have an alibi. That's the part that gets me, is these Kohbergers that are just brain dead. Like, he doesn't have an alibi. You know how many times Anne has begged him to give her an alibi? He won't give it because he doesn't have one, and he's never going to have one. The dude did it. It's that simple. And thank God we have a law that basically makes somebody come out and say, hey, if you plan on saying you were somewhere else, then you need to, like, give the defense a chance to verify that. Because what if you say you're with XYZ person? Well, they need to go interview that person and verify it.
Yeah.
You know, Thompson's brought it up multiple times. You can't hide your evidence and then drop it the very last minute and then say, haha, you didn't get to go find out that this isn't true. This person doesn't live in the state anymore. They're over in another country. You know, you can't just drop this. So he doesn't have an alibi, people. I mean, what? Come on. Who's out at 2:50-ish, turns their phone off, looking around on stars when it was foggy and it was icy and it starts to snow?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, and yeah, they know exactly all about that park. We've talked to the person that worked at that park. Yeah, there's cameras at that park. We'll see. And like I said, ain't got no freaking star apps that, like, you can point your camera up there and record them and it'll tell you exactly, identify those stars. This guy's done, man. He's done. He's completely done in so many ways that it's just frustrating that there's even channels that can play these people. But I noticed they're getting less and less. Hippler has cleared things up, and that's just by exposing the truth. But there's more, and it's going to get. But I thought when these Kohberger delusional self-identifying, that's what it really gets down to me, is I think some people identify as a Kohberger. They identify as somebody who does a little blow and hangs out and is a little misfit and nobody likes them. And there's all these really popular people out there, and they have it coming to them, man, because they never really understood how special they were. And I think it's more of a reflection of them than it is the case, because the case is so strong that I thought when that Amazon order went to his door and he's deleting his history and his own family is like, what the heck is going on with our brother? Our brother's like losing his mind. That they would jump ship, and some did, but there's still people who just can overlook, no alibi. The murder weapon's in his house, in his possession. He doesn't have it anymore. He doesn't have any of the items associated. Yeah, and this Dickies outfit, people, they've gone to the actual stores and looked up the inventory, exactly what is in those things. And there's only a certain amount. For those who don't know, Pullman and Moscow are very, very small towns. So your Dickies selection is like this big. You know, it's that big. Maybe a little bit bigger than that, but not much. It's not like a Dickies that you see in the city where there's all these things. There's Dickie boots and all. There's very slim things that this individual could have bought. And it's like a monkey suit, you know, like a suit you put on where you're changing oil and the oil could literally pour off of you.
Right.
So, that's why they're not fighting the fingernails and all that stuff. And it was one of the reasons why we were a little frustrated early on, like where we were like, why don't we say, if you see somebody with a scratch on their face and, you see something, like say something. We got all this media. We could do it. And those are the type. That's probably part of the reason why they share certain things with us. Is they're like, this guy, we don't want him to go on there and say something like that because it's not relevant. Because this person literally had a Dickies outfit on, was covered head to toe, had a mask with his eyes. You couldn't even scratch the guy. You couldn't even scratch. It's like a paper he wrote. It's like the guy wrote about his own crime. I mean, these people. It just blows my mind. He writes about his own crime. He interviews individuals and investigates them to figure out how he can incorporate that into his crime. Mm-hmm. We had people write us letters that were like, I was one of the people that was interviewed, and he was obsessed with how I was picking my victims. He was picking victims. This guy said, I told him I picked my victims after they called 911 or their neighbors called 911 on them for a noise complaint, and the husband or the boyfriend was hauled off to jail. Then he would go and he goes, there are certain neighborhoods where they had money. Then I would go in there because I knew the mail wasn't there. And he said, and Bryan called him back repeatedly. And he said, I got a sense that he was really enjoying my stories and how I was telling passed out women, butt naked. And he went into those and was just like, he really liked my story. He liked that. And then I started wondering, well, who was calling 911 on these kids? Especially in the daytime, in the middle of the day. They're next to a stadium, a football stadium. How do you get a noise complaint in a college town in the daytime? So, unless, maybe you're trying to figure out how long it takes them to show up. I don't know.
Or what kind of response happens afterwards? Like who leaves, who stays? Do they come back? If you were to call 911 while there's a party, does everybody not come back? Is that what you need to do?
And if you get a warning that if we come back here, we're going to find you, somebody's going to jail.
Yeah.
Might be a time where you want to sneak in or do a little surveillance around that house, because that might be the time where you want to go in there, because the last thing they want to do is pick up and call 911.
It was awfully quiet that night. And I think that a lot of that had to do with, one, there was other parties in other places in town, but two, there was also I guess, minors in possession of alcohol and, deterrent going on. There was the stop there by the van field by undercover officers in the area trying to stop underage drinking and loud noises. I often wondered if Kohberger was aware of that going on that night, and if maybe that's why that led to one of the reasons why, because he knew that there would be some sort of enforcement out that night that would prevent loud parties or a party in that neighborhood.
Yeah. We have somebody who was working in a department that was in charge of all those programs.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So, I think where your mind's going is a logical conclusion of what the behavior footprint of this person's done. And believe me, they've analyzed this footprint. I mean, somebody who goes through the exercise of doing a survey in Reddit, and if you go look at the times, the guy had already graduated.
Yeah.
And it wasn't used in his graduation, his whatever, his final.
Thesis.
Yeah, his thesis, his final. So, I'd be shocked if this individual didn't know a lot of what was going on from the police standpoint on both sides of that state, Washington and Idaho. And I think that scared some of the local police departments, and I mean, you read one of them and where they're like, thank God, we didn't hire this guy. It would have been that much uglier if that email that came out saying that he tried to apply for that job when he first came up, but he eventually would have got part of that program. I've been told that that program is a requirement for graduation for the PhD. So, he was in tune with what those guys were doing.
Yes, but I mean, it sounded like he applied in the spring because of that email that came out. Maybe it was just a reference to what was coming out, but the document, the PCA, references a essay that he wrote in the fall when he applied. And so I thought that if he was applying again in the fall, that meant that he didn't get the job in the spring, given his background being a former person who was addicted to heroin and perhaps some of the things that may have happened to him at other schools, or even his job as a security officer may have prevented him from passing a background check. I was concerned that he may never became not concerned. I was glad that he probably wasn't ever going to be a police officer, but that's interesting.
I think he had visions of himself being that. Whether they would have, maybe he doesn't slip through the cracks. I understood that he slipped through some cracks already because of COVID.
Yeah.
Some of the background checks were not done because of the COVID stuff going on. I have no proof that that's true or not. It's just insiders that told me what was going on during that time. Certain labs were closed because of COVID. Campuses were not all open. I know that for a fact. So, I would think that they would have caught him.
Yeah, I think the professor that recommended him to the PhD program said that he had actually never met, or she'd never met Bryan Kohberger in person. Everything was online.
Wow.
That was the person that actually recommended him.
Is that Ramsey?
No, it was a different Bolger. I think it was her last name.
I don't know anything about that individual. That's interesting.
Yeah. She's the one who recommended him to the PhD program. She said that he was one of two. He was one of two students to recommend that she's ever recommended, and that he was very bright and brilliant, etc. But that she never met him in person. That it was during online courses due to COVID and everything else that was going on during that time.
Well, that makes a lot more sense because he creeped out every girl that actually got around him. I just got a call yesterday from a girl that I was asking permission to use her name to investigate one of the reports that she put in after this all went down. She says she hadn't heard much afterwards. So yeah, there's a lot of women that's why they're like trying to make this whole ASD. I heard that came from his mama who went and dug through his old records because these medical records aren't back in the 90s and the early 2000s. They weren't, there was no EMS, electronic medical record system back then that is still actively. Now you got cancer or something like that. Your records are probably going to still be out there. But if, you got a broken finger or something in 2001, don't be surprised if you go to a doctor visit and they can't pull that record up. But I understood that somebody went and found some of his old records and tried to convince the defense that they could use those to make an excuse for his odd behavior, because there's going to be student after student after student that are going to just talk about how they had a running tally on this guy, on all the weirdness that he was doing and the inappropriate behavior that this guy had. I mean, he'd barely been there and he was getting kicked out in a university where that is super rare, guys. You don't just go into universities and see people getting fired. It's almost unheard of. So, this guy was setting off, alarms all over the place. And this individual said that she made a police report and she wanted me to find out if they had found anything out on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more police reports or more reports, as you mentioned, against him and about his behavior. I did hear about the Bryan tally and his behaviors, and I know that there was I think a document recently on the defensive side that stated that he was cleared. And one of the things that I walked it through with my audience is saying that, well, if he was cleared, that means there's an investigation. And if there's an investigation, that means there's an accusation. Now, what we do know is that these young ladies started to document. What probably happened was they reported some of this behavior and it was investigated, and it was he said, she said type of stuff. And they were probably told to start to document things, which is why they had this tally going on in efforts because of how disturbing these behaviors were, so that they could have some sort of proof. Because if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. And I think that's a pretty clear path that we're seeing of escalation as well, as far as what's leading up to eventually would be that would happen on November 13th. Going back to Bryan Kohberger's 2020 writings that we spoke about just a few minutes ago, one of the things that really stood out to me was when he was referencing, well, there's two things. He was referencing that there might be something that could throw off investigators that was left by the killer. And another thing is to check the doors for DNA as, the person was leaving. Maybe perhaps they may have left DNA behind on the door. And we find out that the back sliding glass door was left open the entire time. Now, I strongly suspect that being the case because, well, if he's opening the door, he's touching it once. If he's closing it again, then he's touching it twice, and then opening it to get out. That's at least 3 different times that he's touching it. One time after he's already exerted himself, which would probably mean that he's sweating and things of that nature. That would be a high possibility for him to leave DNA behind. Well, he points that out in his 2020 writing. Sliding glass door is open. I see a huge connection there. Are you connecting the same dots as I am?
Yeah, very much so. And I know that there's some people looking at this exact same angle. So much so to, like, I've heard a scenario where Xana goes in. Let's say she goes in, she gets her meal prepared. The DoorDash meal, goes to the bathroom, goes to her room, something. Goes back into the kitchen and says, "Oh, there's somebody here." How does she know that? Because that slider's been left wide open, and there's a Kïll Kit, something there, some kind of baggage, some kind of thing that raises a flag that somebody just came into my house, and maybe you're hearing noises upstairs, and yeah. So I've seen a couple different scenarios that have been discussed. I don't have anything concrete. I can't go there, but I think that
well, the dog barking at the exact same time that you can hear whimpering and a thud says that the glass door had to have been open. It sounds like when Dylan woke up and she heard who she thought was Kaylee, probably because of the dog going up at the same time. It was actually Xana coming downstairs. Well, Murphy would have been running with her, and it sounds like she went to Ethan and Murphy went outside. And I think when she hears somebody say, "It's okay, I'm here to help you," is that confrontation in the hallway between maybe Xana turns around to see what's going on, and there he is. And he says that in order to surprise her, I guess.
Yeah, one of the death penalty qualifiers is that actually I'm here to help you, when that individual could have just left. They didn't have to kill him. So so people who talk all this madness about DM, she's been huge to the case, actually massive to the case, and you're going to find out that the late 911 call is actually going to be probably the final call, the final nail in his coffin. So there's even benefits to even the most tragic parts. I mean, a late call, if it leads to different evidence, then it's a good thing. And I say that knowing that my daughter wasn't going to survive what she was stabbed so many different times. So, and I can clarify a little bit of that too.
You're referring to him going back out there? Like had she called 911 early, then he wouldn't have gone back at 9 o'clock, right?
I'm referring to a couple different things, but the coroner made it clear that at least 2 of the victims, it's hard for me to talk about, but they basically drowned on their stab wounds. So the blood wasn't like all over the place, or it would explain why the blood was contained. So if you have a blanket over you and you're doing a lot of internal bleeding, your body will hold a portion of that. So like I said, everything that these people are trying to spin into some crazy conspiracy actually has a scientific background of why it is the way it is. And it's not Hollywood. It's not officers or a vacuum cleaner that went in there and vacuumed up stuff or whatever these crazy people want to say. That I think the vacuum cleaner is just the K-bar with one of the shirts that he grabbed and wrapped it around it. So you have a K-bar in your hand and you wrap a shirt around it. What does it do? It goes big and then goes down.
Yeah.
And I think he just seen the amount of blood. He wasn't sure if it was his. Yeah, he's bled everywhere. So he just wrapped it up and built it out of the house with trying to mitigate the trail as much as he possibly could, because he was going to that door where he had the rest of his kit.
Do you think that we're going to find out in this trial what the prosecution believes he did with that knife?
I know some of the background of where they looked and what they were trying to find. And honestly, I think I just go to the simplest. Why has he got a shovel in the back of his car? You know,
Sure.
And it's not these idiots, because there's a Kohberger out there right now thinking to themselves that they're smart. No, you're stupid. You're an idiot. It was a mini one. It wasn't very big. You don't use it for snow. So anybody who thinks he was using that for snow, you're just a moron. You don't live out here. Nobody uses a shovel like that. You use a shovel like that for dirt, and it has a super tip. So driving around with a shovel tells me that he probably had something to do with that, because then that gives him the ability to go back and get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he showed all these. This was a fantasy for him. You know, he planned it for a long time. And so that was going to be, you know, the FBI were the ones that told they would be surprised about the Kïll Kit. So it wasn't like I came up with that and I had some insight about this true crime stuff. I didn't know. They told me they wouldn't be surprised if he surveilled the house multiple times. They wouldn't be surprised if he snuck into the house. Now, whether he did or not, I'm not saying he did. I'm not saying he did or he didn't. I don't know that. But I don't know that the profile that they built of this individual said that this person was going to surveil the house and be comfortable with it. Because, I mean, it's a knife. I mean, when you use a knife, it shows a certain level of planning and a comfort level that you're going to go in there. And these houses, people might not know this either, that these floor plans after COVID, they all went online. They put floor plans so you didn't have to ask to go see these houses. You could go online, most of these rental places, and see the whole floor plan, including this one, because this is called the Queens on the Kings Road. This is where the Queens were, because it was on Kings Road, and it was the house that for multiple generations where every kid wanted to be because of the location. Put you, as soon as you got off the campus from the football game, you're right there. So you could go drink and not be harassed, you know? And if you wonder why 911 wasn't called, you know, use your brain, guys. I mean, maybe you didn't go to college. You don't need to go to college to understand that. You want to get off campus and you want to have a beer with your friends. And if you got somebody who's 21 and somebody who's not 21, you better talk to the person who's 21 before you call 911.
Yeah.
Or that's standard protocols, right? That's standard protocol, because if that six-pack in the fridge has got 2 beers and those 2 beers are in somebody's room that they should be in, you know, now graduation, your finals are over. You know, you're sitting in you're getting a citation or who knows what goes with that, you know. So people can read between the lines and understand what was probably going on.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, the back door, and you mentioned that maybe he'd been there before. You know, I think everybody's seen this image where they use these stools to secure the back sliding glass door after the fact. Was it broken? Was there something wrong with it?
I've been told that all those doors do not work correctly. And when I say all, that there's a lot of construction that was done around the exact same time. So maybe that was just a certain area that hadn't been developed, and then it got developed. So then those sliders are very common. So you can push the slider towards the lock and hit it, and it will pop it up. So that was well known that those sliders weren't very secure at locking. So I don't have any idea that that's what this person did, but I was told that even if you lock that slider, that would be a place where you would want to, or you're a person who's going to sneak into somebody else's home, a burglar, that would be an ideal door to try to test.
Yeah. You know, there was a time not too long ago where Ann Taylor was talking in one of her hearings, and they were mentioning that there wasn't any DNA of the victims inside of his vehicle, but they mentioned something about being sprayed all over the place. Now, I don't know if that's something that maybe CSI guys did to try to find something, or is there maybe, are you aware if they found anything in the car that could lead to like maybe?
I'm glad you bring this up because nobody talks about this part. So don't believe me. Go do your own search. Go research. Go to a paid version of AI. There's some AIs that have legal descriptions and libraries. Go look it up. 6 weeks in a car, that DNA is gone. Even if you leave it there, it's going to be contaminated. It's going to degrade. So they were like, don't be surprised if we don't find anything in there because it's sitting in outdoor weather where it's going below freezing to up to 70 degrees. They literally looked at all the temperatures every single day that vehicle was outside. It wasn't garaged. So it's sitting in the baking sun, then going as cold as it possibly did. I think the coldest was something like 20 some degrees. And then the hottest it got was like 60 some degrees. But inside a car, you amplify that right on up. So yeah, this individual clean, they sprayed with something, but even if they left something there, six weeks inside of a car, it wasn't going to come back. It wasn't, at least that's how it was described to me. This stuff's not going to come back, or don't be surprised. They would have been very surprised if they found something that was usable. They were saying, no, it could be under a carpet seal or something to protect it. It would have needed something to protect it because if it was in direct sunlight, like literally in 24 hours, DNA can start becoming corrupt in sunlight, especially sunlight inside of a car. So, yeah, this stuff will probably be brought up in the trial, but I never hear anyone ever talk about, hey, this car literally drove from Washington all the way to Pennsylvania. That's a lot of exposure. I wonder if this person just cleaned it up, or if they found something, it just didn't come back as anything that was viable because it was 100% contaminated.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're hinting at. There was some contamination. I do know that the FBI went through that car piece by piece. And unlike some of these people, I think they do a very good job. And I think they're very skilled at what they do. And if they didn't find anything, then there wasn't much to be found. But again, there's definitely going to be a sense of some corruption. And they did find, like you said, there were some cleaning supplies that I hope that they can actually be traced back to a certain lab, because not everything is purchasable over the counter. There's certain things that you have to have a license to purchase.
Yeah, exactly. There's another case that had occurred. I want to say the last name was Porco or something like that, or Porco. A guy out of Rochester, New York, drove 3 hours, and he took the life of his mother or his father, and he hit his mom with an axe to the head, to both of them. And he drove 3 hours back, and when they searched his Jeep, no blood. He stood over him when he did it. Now, the reason that they believe that he was able to accomplish this, because there was no cleanup, no sign of a shower or anything like that, was because he was a veterinarian tech, and at his place of business, they had materials that would protect veterinarian techs during surgeries, and that's what he had worn. And he was able to drive 3 hours back without getting any DNA. The only DNA, I think, the DNA that they actually got him that ended up convicting him was he went through a toll booth and he got the DNA off of the sticker, the receipt that he got from there, and so that's what ended up doing him in. But I think that there's the possibility, especially when you see that 2020 May letter final that he wrote about how what to wear so that way you don't contaminate a scene. I think we're going to see a bunch of that in his purchases, and I think that's going to be something else that does him in.
Yeah, it's just another record that they were able to pull off where, yeah, I mean, he talks about the right outfit that you would want to commit this crime in, and then they have him purchasing. Maybe it's not exactly the same, but we all know what a Dickies outfit, one of the thing, it's basically what Michael Myers wore.
Yeah.
So, it's I guess some people like to be lied to. They like to be manipulated and strung around. It's a bizarre thing for me, as a father. I never want that for my kids. I want my kids to think on their own and not be naive and get led astray. But maybe some people that's just not for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there are some folks, it doesn't matter. I had one guy literally tell me that because I guess there was a vehicle in Eugene, Oregon. I don't know if you remember that one that was crashed on the side of the road. Mm-hmm. Apparently that belongs to somebody at one point lived in Colorado, and the 1122 residents at one point, one of the investors had property somewhere else in Colorado. That's too much of a coincidence. That's too much. Don't worry about what BK's doing. That's all coincidence. But that car being from Colorado and somebody being from over there from Colorado, different parts, different people, everything else. It's wild, the conspiracies that they believe in. Well, Steve, I don't want to take too much more of your time. Is there anything else that you want to maybe get out, tell the world about anything?
I don't know if I've heard anyone repeat the because I want to bring a little bit of clarity, because people don't realize that, like the interviews that I do on some of the TV channels, they're pretty much live, and even if they're not live, they're not scripted in any shape or form. So we can't go into details like this. So I want to take advantage of on that Bryan tally. His little thumbs up asshole pic.
Yeah.
I think I figured it out. I think it's like 14 hours later, he's calling in sick for work. Yeah. And that's the only day he ever called. Mm-hmm. So he's obsessed with the crime that he did and going through the media. This is all going to be part of his search history. You guys are all going to see it. And, there's a thing, there's exclusive knowledge. If you know about a certain part of a crime before it's made general public, or maybe before it even happens, mm-hmm. It's pretty damning. To me, there's nothing more damage. But I also thought people would change their tune when the Amazon order puts the murder weapon in his house, and his own family's like wondering what the heck's going on. And when I say family, I believe it's just one sister that was really, really helpful, where the other people weren't so much helpful.
Well, I mean, they're pretty specific on the March 20th to March 30th time mm-hmm. frame for that knife purchase. Yeah, 100%.
Somebody was able to tell them exactly when that happened, even though the history had been deleted. Mm-hmm. Why do you delete this? I mean, why would you delete that? If you're this outdoor hunter, CSI, because I hear all these people, oh, he's a CIS grad. He's going to have all this weird stuff. You're not going to have knowledge of a crime, bro. You're not going to have knowledge of the crime. That is not public knowledge. You're not going to have it. I don't care. And it doesn't explain doing surveys and doing all these weird things and creeping every girl out. And the list of the red flags is what really frustrates me, because this guy had been harassing girls all the way back to high school. We've talked to people all the way to high school. Like the girl that was literally like, he's obsessed with me. And it was like extremely embarrassing. I'd walk into the classroom and everyone was like, is he going to be that awkward weirdo that stares at you all day long? And so this goes all the way back to school, and they've interviewed and talked to all these different people. So it frustrates me that you can harass people at school, and because of the way the system is, you kind of go unnoticed. You kind of are able to pull it off because nobody wants to drag those victims into a court case. Nobody wants to do a police report, say this girl is absolutely petrified of this boy and she's crying at night and all that kind of stuff. No, they basically remove the two and then pretend like it never happened. And that he had been removed from so many different situations because some girl came forward all the way up to WSU, he was still getting away with it, still being able to harass these girls. And, it's a very frustrating thing to see how many failures led to your daughter's death.
Yeah.
And but we're working on we're working on this to make sure that we can pass some laws that try to help another family from having to go through a BK type, because unfortunately, this is probably going to lead. I mean, that Georgia kid was a fan of his, the Georgia school shooter. I don't know his name. Gray.
Yeah, I remember he called himself a pro burger.
So it's already happening. So when people see why I'm on a camera and why I'm talking about the death penalty and the firing squad, it's not that I'm into this stuff and I ever would have talked about it. It's just I know there's fans, and trying to save another family in another school and another place of business from dealing with somebody like this. Dreams of Gander. He literally wrote about how he just felt like people were sacks of flesh. I mean, everything this guy did, and to think that some people are still following a narrative that he has been all set up. Like, who set you up when they don't even know who you are? And that's another way. You're going to plant somebody's DNA and they're not in CODIS? What are you, stupid? And there's criminals all around your community that you could literally plant that and they'd be arrested and never see a day of light and it'd be over and done with. Nobody would even question it. But you're gonna go after this PhD guy who you're gonna have to do this whole IgG thing to. It's gonna spend weeks working on it. It doesn't even make sense. Who sets up somebody like that? Yeah. So I appreciate you giving an audience and helping set the table straight and help bringing out as much truth as we possibly can. I always say go to Idaho's webpage, go look at the court records, go through it. Don't take my word. Don't take Daniel's word. Go look yourself. Verify everything that you hear, and hopefully this summer we can get this case over with, and you'll see it play out, and it's going to end. I know exactly how it's going to end.
Yeah, no, I have a strong suspicion on how it's going to end as well. Knowledge of the crime. I mean, there was a late 911 call. He may have seen somebody. Is it possible that he made a search during the time before the 911 call came out?
He felt very confident to return to that scene at 9:00, right?
Yep.
I wonder why he felt so confident.
It's true. That is true. Those were one of the things that boggled my mind, for a while now. It's like he was able to go back. He went back. I mean, the scene could have been discovered at any point. A camera could have been set up, and they could have been documenting cars that were driving by at any point. And he went back. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you again for coming on. Maybe after this is all over, if I can get you back on and we can talk about your experience there, then maybe we can get you on about some other things that don't have to do with true crime. Maybe. I know we've had our conversations with other stuff as well.
I got you, man. Yeah, you would. You're the kind of guy that you're my neighbor. We would probably shoot the shit and catch up and hang out and have a couple beers or in a barbecue. And those are the type of people that I hang out with and have an association with. But nothing like BK.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I mean, this guy, he's just seeing that picture that he took, that selfie. It makes you mad. I mean, mad is just not even a strong enough word. Angry. There's a lot of things. Just knowing what he just did, and yeah,
knowing that all those times he got away with it through the school and all that thing, he finally felt like he become the master of his own demons, and it was all in that photo. He really thought he was gonna get away with it. And so much so he went to the crime scene, returned to the crime scene. So I don't want to hear people say that he wouldn't have made those mistakes. He's still compulsive. He's still a freaking self-absorbed ass. Yeah. So he wanted to go see what he did. He wanted to see chaos. He didn't see it, but I wouldn't be surprised that he returned to the crime scene because he wasn't a robot. He wanted to be a robot. He tries to act like he's one up on with his ASD and all this stuff, but he's very much human, and he made human mistakes, and it's all going to come out. And like I said, I want enough information to come out to where when this conviction's over and done with, these trolls just go and find another case to talk about, and we can go back to normal, and we never have to deal with this stuff anymore. I've already told my family once we get to the death penalty, we'll step away. We don't need to do any interviews. We don't need to be involved in it anymore. And I don't even want to worry about it at that point. I just know he's locked up with 23 and 1. That's good enough for me. And if it takes 20 years, 30 years, that's not my problem. I've done as much as I possibly can as a father, and but I don't want it to just become my identity. We have to go fishing, and we got to go hang out with our kids and our grandkids and put this behind us.
Amen, brother. Well, you have yourself a safe week, and we'll be talking soon. And I'll probably be seeing you out there in Boise once this thing gets going.
That's it, guys. That is the interview. Just about an hour and 43 minutes or so that I got a conversation there with Steve. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think in the live chat. I'm going to go through some of the questions I started earlier. We have 49er girl coming in with a membership for 20 months. Thank you so much. She comes in with a $5 super chat as well. Justice for Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan, 100%. We have Julie coming in with a $19.99 super chat. Thank you so much. We have Sissy with the membership for 27 months. Thank you. Best YouTube show. Hey, Daniel, how's it going? Thank you. Appreciate the kind words as well. Let's see. And I'm going to get to some questions as well. I'm just going to get through the super chats first. Midwest, $5. Thank you so much. God bless to you as well. Canadian True Crime Buff, what's going on? Thank you to our mods tonight. You guys have been rock stars. Thank you so much. Been a member for 24 months. Another mod here in the building, Daniel. I thank you always for having the victims in the spotlight, not being. And well, thank you, Sirius. I appreciate that. I give no publicity to those channels. Canadian True Crime Buff comes in with a 5 Drunk Turkey Show membership. Thank you so much. Midwest coming in with a membership for 3 months. Robert coming in with a super sticker for 3 months. And I'm going to get to your guys' questions. I know you guys have a few. I've started a few of them. And we'll get through some of the questions you guys may have had, my takes on it. I know a lot of people were asking about this inside information. I strongly suspect that Bryan Kohberger may have searched. This is my opinion, me personally. I think he searched the murders before they happened. Prior information, prior knowledge of the crime, those type of things. You know, we didn't get into Papa Rogers, but maybe that's what he meant. But I don't think so. You know, he referenced he was brave enough to go back at 9 a.m. You know, that's well before the whole Papa Rogers stuff. So I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think he searched. This dude searched about the crime before it was reported. Now, why do you think he did that? He probably saw Dylan as he was walking out. Let's see. Chelsea comes in and says, I had to send a super chat on this one. Much respect for you getting this team to happen. I am often an on supporter, but always click the like button. Thank you so much. Chelsea, having Steve speaks up after everything he's gone through is truly inspiring. I couldn't imagine the pain this man is going through. God bless him and his whole family. God bless you and everyone in chat. Yes. You know, the hardest part for me, you know, and even listening back to it tonight with you guys was when we find out about the different injuries between Kaylee and Maddie and what the coroner basically stated that Bryan Kohberger allegedly did, which is punching her in the face. That's just so heartbreaking to hear. You know, when I asked him the question, I wasn't trying to go into any details of the injuries. You know, my thoughts were, and I was speculating, and maybe I was wrong for that, but you know, my thoughts were, okay, you have two people in the same bed, so one person's going to be surprise attack, right? The next person, there's a good chance that they're going to wake up during this, and so you probably have to act quicker, right? not necessarily thinking that there was more of a significant type of injury outside of that, like a punch to the face like that. I know there's some documents that have been dropped, and we're going to go through those documents tomorrow night. But one of them talk about multiple different types of weapons and things of that nature. Now, this is my speculation again. I think that punch to the face, and Steve goes into that there's some more stuff there, and I'm not sure what that is. I don't want to go down that road. I didn't want to go down that road then either. I don't want him to have to relive any of those type of things. But it sounds like, to me, to a certain extent, during the questionings and the questions, the way he answered it, it almost seems like he still thinks that there's a good chance that Kaylee may have been one of, if not the person that was the target, so to speak, right? And the injuries not matching up and those type of things, him having to go to the third floor, those type of things kind of point in that direction. And so I don't know, but to me, I thought that was the most heartbreaking and gut-wrenching part of the entire interview. For me, during that moment, it was a hard part of the interview to go through, to be honest with you. Let's see. Artworks comes in, being a member for 11 months. I love tacos. This is a great show. Heartbreaks for these families, Daniel. You rock. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Natalie, whoa, comes in with a $49.99. Daniel, you have done a remarkable job on this case. On this sad case, your integrity is appreciated. I am happy you are going to take the Gilgo Rex human case to task as well, DTS Rock. Yes, I have to get into that one. I know there's some stuff that I'm lacking in that one. Nick comes in with a $9.99 saying trial can't come fast enough. 100%. Texas Ranger says early, did Steve, you may be right about him having a death wish. That was one thing that I remember in one of the documents, there was something about him, or in these writings, I think it was actually in the writings, wasn't in the documents, that he was suicidal. And some people ask, well, why do this in Idaho? If he would have stayed in Washington State, well, there's not a death penalty state there. So, is there a possibility that he thought, well, if I'm going to get caught and prosecuted, I don't want to spend, a natural life in prison. And so maybe that's the reason why he may have chosen Idaho over Washington. It's a possibility there. Good possibility there. Do they think the weapon broke? Maybe. I mean, it's possible. One of the things that, and we got to take into consideration what it is that where this accusation of multiple weapons comes from, right? It's coming from the defense. Now, I've had Steve from True Crime Web on the channel. He is a former CSI investigator. And one of the things that he's told us is that when somebody is getting stabbed, that the blade can be manipulated when it hits bone, meat, or anything hard, or when it's being applied by force, and that those tears would be different because the blade wouldn't be the same. It could, any type of manipulation, chip, bend, those type of things would show up in the injuries. And so, the defense kind of using their words, and to me, when they go out there and say they have exculpatory this and that, and they talk about Cyray and all this other stuff, and then it comes out to be just such crap, you lose a little bit of credibility, in my opinion. And I'm kind of like, all right, to me, it's probably something to the effect like this, where there's some sort of bend or break of the knife, and it is showing up, or it appears to be, different injuries, or he could have used different injuries. I think the document mentions that they did some run-in or some timing things where they timed a detective going in at a fast rate and then at a much slower rate into the house, going up the stairs, striking, I'm assuming, body dummies in the manner of which the injuries that would match the victims that they had, and that they were able to accomplish that between 2 and 4 minutes, 2 minutes on the fast time and 4 minutes on a short time. Now we know he was out there for about 13, 14 minutes. And so the rest of that is mitigation. He's trying to suppress the amount of DNA that he's leaving behind. Maybe perhaps he's changing his clothing, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we're going to find out those things. But those tests that they conducted of running in and out of that house, I mean, that's huge. That's massive. I know a lot of people were concerned about the 7-8, when it was like 7-8 minutes, which it was 13 minutes that he was parked out there, from 4:07 to 4:20, I think it was 4:20 and it was almost 4:21. It was like 4:20 and like 43 seconds when his vehicle was captured, leaving at a high rate of speed from the neighbor's house. Now, again, I don't know how slow people think people move, but some cars can travel like a quarter mile in a matter of a few seconds. And so I know his Elantra isn't one of those, but to traverse, less than a block, it's probably going to take a matter of seconds. So, between 4:07 and 4:20 is when that vehicle parks, and the vehicle is then seen again traveling at a high rate of speed. So you got 13 minutes. And if he's committing the actual murders, going in and able to, take the lives in the manner with the stab wounds, I mean, that leaves a significant amount of time to clean up, do something. I mean, I'm sure we're going to find out during trial. We're going to find out. Let's see. Do they know how he found the girls? I'm not sure how the contents of that one. What about the gag order? So that obviously, as you guys can see now, that it was recorded. Me and Steve had that interview on Tuesday, and what had occurred was we recorded it. We sent it out to the lawyers, and we had our attorneys look over it and make sure that there was nothing that violated any of the gag order. And then I got the green light today, which is why we are playing it. So, yeah, we didn't violate any gag order. There's not anything that we crossed any lines or anything like that. A lot of the stuff that we spoke about, as the banner mentions at the bottom, which I'm going to move real quick. So you guys can see my new Idaho Bill 30, House Bill 37 shirt. As you can see, yeah, we didn't violate any gag orders. Let's see. BK told his neighbor they think it was a crime of passion, with injuries being so much more. Could he have been trying to make it look like Kaylee was a target with a recent breakup? That's possible. I mean, if he was, stalking, and I mean, the term stalking and the statute of stalking in Idaho are two different things, right? So I'm going to use the term stalking from a federal standpoint, which is something that I think that maybe Steve was alluding to during our interview when he mentioned that he spoke to some federal agents that they weren't going to just let somebody commit a mass murder of 4 people and just let them walk on some sort of technicality, that they got it covered. And I think that aspect would come in through there. So he ain't getting away with this. Let's see. Do people really believe he was stargazing? Yeah. Does Steve know how afraid Dylan truly was, or did she think she may have been pranked, or maybe? I mean, I think there was a combination of a lot of things, right? I think that there was some fear there. She didn't understand what was going on. She didn't know what was going on, and I think that there was a lack of some things that you probably expect to hear if there's a quadruple homicide being, occurring, like the lack of blood curdling screams. Right now, we do know before the Kohbergers go into it, like, oh, you're saying something like, oh, there's a lack of screams, so Bryan Kohberger couldn't have done it. No, it's impossible. Somebody committed these crimes. Anywho, you don't hear that, or that's not described from the audio from 50 feet away. Kicking, screaming, none of those things. It's a thud and whimpers and voices. So some people can probably understand some of the confusion that they were going through. You read the text messages, and We know that, some of the things now based off of the documents that were put out, that Dylan may have seen Xana on the ground, but as she indicated, and as Steve indicated, based on where the injuries were on the bodies, they may not have bled out in the manner that a lot of people were thinking, or may not have been as visible as many people thought because of how and where they were struck. Knowledge of the crime, what does that mean? Yeah, we talked about that. That I strongly suspect that he searched. Knowledge of the crime, what does that mean, A to Z? I think that means that he searched the Idaho murders. A lot of people get mad at Dylan and Bethany about that 8-hour delay, but what could have came out of that is if he searched murders or whatever before it ever happened, and that's got him. That's got him. Say no to globalism, huh? The lab. Yeah. I caught that too. Let's see. Why would Bryan be so important that they would plant his DNA? Laughable. He's a nobody. 100%. Who would intentionally plant only DNA on the... Yeah. So glad I found this channel. Great, respectful interview. Thank you. I appreciate that. Amber comes in with a $4.99 super sticker. Thank you. Tamara, pro burgers are liars. 100%. Fireworks praying for Steve and his family and justice for Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan. Daniel, that was excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. I truly do. You guys are great. Let's see. I'm just going to kind of scan through these, see if I see anything. Hey, Nally says, I should mail Steve and his wife a new t-shirt. You know what? I might just do that. I got to get their sizes. I'll get them one. Daniel, what do you think about the jury information being suppressed? What's thinking about that today? Why so secretive? If you've heard about it. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't really read into it, to be honest with you. And I'll be 110% honest. I'm not familiar with like that aspect of hold on one second. I want to move this closer. I'm not familiar with that aspect of like court proceedings and stuff, as far as like juries, questions, questionnaires, or all those things. No clue if that's normal or not, to be 110% honest with you. Let's see. Love your work, Daniel. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that, Shelly. I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much. Well, guys, that's going to do it for... Well, you know what? Somebody brought up one thing real quick. The DD driver. So, I was contacted a long time ago by somebody who claims that they were familiar with the DoorDasher. Now, their claim wasn't that they were the DoorDasher, but that they were very close to the DoorDasher. And so, I took this information with a grain of salt. I'll be 110% honest with you. This person had told me some information, and I believe it was around the time, it may have been right before the DoorDasher stuff came out. And then afterwards, I reached back out and I was like, whoa, how did you know this? Right. Well, anyways, there was also the fact that they had provided me their name, phone number, address, a bunch of personal information they had provided me. And they told me that this was their story. No way of verifying it. But they had told me that this person, friend, and for all I know, she could have been saying that it was her friend and it was her. Or could have been lying to me. I couldn't tell you. But what this person had said was that her friend was a DoorDasher, and that they had pulled up, and as they pulled up, a white Elantra was coming the opposite direction. Well, a white car, not an Elantra. They didn't specify that. that a white car was coming the opposite direction, and that the DoorDasher claimed that she could see a young lady in the second floor window looking out, and assuming that that's the person that was looking out waiting for the DoorDash delivery, and that the white vehicle was coming towards them, and that a person was looking intensely at the house as they passed by, to the point that they didn't even notice that the DoorDasher was parked outside. Now, I have no idea if that's true or not, but apparently they also mentioned that it appeared that Xana, or the young lady, I mean, I'm assuming it was Xana. She didn't say it was Xana. She said that there was a young lady. That Xana had made like that she had seen the white car passing, that it appeared that they looked at each other, like in that direction. You know, that person driving the white car was just intensely looking out in the direction of the house, and that the person in the second floor looked at the DoorDash, and then looked over, saw the white car, and then turned around, and I guess, was going to go pick up her food downstairs. But this is before she was able to get down and drop off the food, I guess. And so I don't know how true it is, but based on, Stephen kind of mentioning that what he had seen is that it seems like they may have crossed paths with each other. The DoorDasher and the white Elantra brings a little bit more credibility to that story. Not saying that it's a lot of credibility. I mean, it's a 50-50 chance, right? Either, they parked out there and saw something, or they didn't, right? So the odds aren't like, outrageous, but so take that for what that is, but just kind of wanted to point that out. All right. Well, guys, I want to thank everybody tonight. You guys have been amazing. I want to thank the mods. You guys were rock stars tonight, making sure that we kept the lunatics out. You guys, I'll be back tomorrow night. We'll go through those documents. I'll ask a little bit of questions and find out about that the jury selection questions, if that's something that's normal or not. I'll ask around. Like, comment, subscribe, share this, please. I actually intend on distributing the actual interview just by itself without anything, probably in the morning. And so that'll be on a video platform, but share this, like, comment, subscribe. You know what to do. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.